Welcome to Unplugged Live with Dr. Diane Smith-Clark, PhD. Get ready to get inspired by the stories of overcoming life's challenges to bring change and transformation. Here's Dr. Diane.
Hello and welcome back to Unplugged. I am so delighted that you're tuning in to this very powerful series dealing with Alzheimer's and dementia. Tonight is going to be a very special segment because we're going to deal with how dementia and Alzheimer's impacts the African American, coming up in just a moment. Thank you so much for subscribing, liking, and following us on social media. It means a lot to know that our efforts are being effective in our community and that you are being inspired, helped, and blessed by the information that we bring. So don't forget to like, share, subscribe this broadcast so that you can be a blessing to other people's lives. Coming up is Motown Review. Don't forget to get your ticket. Tickets are available at Ticketmaster and on Eventbrite or on the website at drdianeclark.org. That's DRDIANECLARK.org. You may purchase your ticket there, or you may nominate a grandparent or register as a grandparent who are raising their grandchildren. We want to celebrate you on September 30th at an event called Motown Review. We have a live band, great food, great fun, free gifts, and some of the prizes are actually going to be monetary. So you don't want to miss that event. That's September 30th, Motown Review. It's going to be held at the Social Event Center, 644 Accessory Boulevard in Jacksonville, Florida. If you need more information, just tag us on this broadcast. We'll get back with you. Or again, you can go to our website. And now for tonight's show. This is going to be rich. We have with us Bishop Dr. S. Janine Hyman from Virginia, and we're going to be talking about the second half of Alzheimer's dementia with an emphasis on its impact in the African American community. Welcome, Dr. Hyman.
Thank you.
It's so good to have you back.
Thank you, ma'am. What the Jazzy glasses today? I need the glasses.
I know. You need my glasses.
I need them glasses in my life.
I can't run off and get them. I'm sorry.
But you look beautiful without them. You look beautiful without them.
I didn't put them on. I usually have them on because that's my signature, but I didn't today because I wasn't going to have to read anything. We're doing a continuation of our first segment. Yes. But I remember when I have you on that you want me to wear the Jazzy glasses.
Them glasses is terrible. Yes, ma'am. I love them.
Well, thank you for that compliment. Thank you so much. I'm glad we're able to pick this back up. When we left off, we ran out of time and we were just getting to how the caregivers are impacted working with patients who have Alzheimer's and dementia. And their need for some type of support group, mental health counseling, and so forth is where we left off on our last broadcast. But I want you to talk about the impact of those diseases now on the African American community, especially because we're dealing with residual effects from slavery. We have many times slavery mentalities about things and we don't realize it because nobody talks about it openly. But I'd like to bring that subject and I'd like for you to address it.
Okay. When we look at, and they're starting to look at this a little more, when we look at dementia, the incidence of it among African Americans is greater than any other demographic. So it's Blacks have it more. Then under that, Hispanics. Then under that, I don't see much research about Asians who are here with it. and then of course then whites. And so when you skip from whites to us, it's almost by the next few years, it's going to be almost double the rate. It's going to increase. They're predicting it's going to increase in this country significantly in the next few years. So, and they're saying us because people are living longer. Nah, because people are actually getting this earlier.
Yes.
So it's not that. It's something that they are not telling us relative to either medication, what's in the environment, what's in the ground that we keep raping because we keep violating the law of Shabbat or Sabbath to give that, ground a rest every 7 years. So they're really not telling us exactly, or at least not the general public, why that is. But something that I was noticing even with my mom, who is now 85, every time that there is a significant death to her or in our family, her symptoms get worse. So I've been watching it now for about 7 years. They said maybe 2 years ago, she had some signs of ischemia, which is kind of narrowing of the arteries in the brain. Your arteries and stuff narrow anyway as you get older.
Yeah.
And they begin to look at that, some early stage dementia setting in. But what I noticed was every time we have a death, I'm like, oh God. I noticed the same thing in my grandmother, losses or leaving, or sometimes having to live alone when you're used to people in the house. Those things that give you routine, that give you timing,
right,
that give you, even when people stop working, because working gives you a routine. You know what day it is. You have a sense of timing, and kind of when you leave that, or someone leaves your home, or someone dies around you, that alters routine, time orientation. That seems to also augment the process of it. And so what we're starting to look at now, Dr. Clark, is the effects of trauma,
yes,
longevity, trauma. Not just something happened, but most of the time, if you're Black in America, something happened. Okay, life happens, deaths happen. What I'm saying? Divorces happen. Stuff happens. And so they're now looking at the correlation between trauma and dementia. Okay. So now if you think about it in terms of the elongated trauma that African Americans have dealt with, you're looking at trauma back from chattel slavery on down, and what we are finding out through epigenetics, that this epigenetics shows that trauma travels in the DNA. It has the ability to alter the way in which the DNA expresses itself. Even very harsh, negating words, harsh words that reject or negate or dehumanize, can actually affect the genome. It can affect the DNA. So when we think about the fact that with our ancestors, trauma has traveled in the DNA, then you also add the environmental piece where we are still dealing with racism that affects our economics, that affects our ability to get insured, our ability to get medicine or to be able to pay for these astronomically priced medications, that they just keep increasing. And we're putting those things in our bodies. And there's nothing that your body can process that your brain don't process. And so when you put all of these factors in, the mental health disparity, the medical health disparity, the fact that we are we are the most underdiagnosed and misdiagnosed demographic in the country medically. So you have that. You have the taboo of mental health stuff and mental health decline for African Americans who have a history of ongoing exposure to trauma and rejection and economic frustration and all of this. When you put all of that in there in that mix, then it may stand to reason why African Americans have dementia at much higher rates, and all Alzheimer's is a form of dementia. Okay, it's a form of dementia.
Right.
And so you put that in, then you can begin to understand with the disparities in the medical system, the taboo for us. We don't do mental health stuff, like talk about it. That's weakness. And
right.
Many of our people who have dementia, even with early signs, are in strict denial. That's one of the symptoms. Everybody know you off, but you really know, but you in denial.
Right.
So you have all of that. You have the trauma that has traveled in the genome, or that has affected the way the DNA expresses itself. So you have nature, which is that traveling through the DNA, the trauma. You have nurture, which is a constant environment of racism and oppression, and of discrimination and prejudice and all of that. Those traumas now we're looking at actually affect dementia, the onset of it, the severity of it, and they haven't really looked at that enough. But I see it, in terms of just within my family. Thank God we have long livers. My grandparents lived 93 and 97. Both of my parents are 85 and still, kicking up and shaking their butts and talking smack.
It's epigenetic too. The ability to talk trash.
Yes, we call it talk cash smack. And so when we look at these traumatic kind of stress pieces, they actually do. There's a high positive correlation between these high traumatic stress factors that are consistent. Loss,
yes,
unresolved grief, those kind of things, or words that we harbor. That, let me do it this way: words that we harbor. I'm I have to be the psychologist and the prophet at one time.
Fixing it, okay?
Yes, I'm fixing it as we go. Words that we harbor in the psyche that are completely diametrically opposed to who God made us. That fight, that tension is always there between a narrative or a descriptive that someone put there that we believe, because our behavior matches what they say. The behavior could be for a myriad of reasons.
Yes.
It could be medical. It could be anything.
Yes.
Or it could really be, our uniqueness. We haven't caught up with that. And so when we are wired certain ways with certain gifts and talents, abilities, and anointings, when we haven't matured in that, the gift will hurt us as much as it will help other people. And so in that process, you have these words here, and these behaviors from parents, from nuclear family, from teachers, from elders. But you have this God word in you that says you're this, and they seem to be opposed. That pull, particularly for Black women who are oppressed, we call it intersectionality. They're oppressed because they're Black. Then they're oppressed doubly oppressed because they're women. And so we're starting to see how all of that tension, that pull, that stress, it's a, what can I call this? It's an existential, it's an existential crisis.
Okay.
between what society, church, family says I am because
Mm-hmm.
of color, because of where I was born, who I was born to, what I look like,
Mm-hmm.
male, female, black, whatever, whatever. And then here's what God destined me to do. If that tension stays there for a long time,
Right.
that causes a type of mental stress that we don't have a metric or a rubric for in a DSM to tell us even what that is.
Right.
But we see how even that, particularly with our women and with our men who are oppressed as well,
Mm-hmm.
how that plays a part in how dementia presents itself, the severity of it, the
Mm-hmm.
onset of it.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, there's no whole lot of reversing it. You can slow down the progression of it, and you can control some of the bad judgment or impulsivity that goes along with it.
Mm-hmm. That is very true. And when you're dealing with long-term stress, even when you don't understand where the stress is coming from. I
That's
was
right.
watching, yeah, I like to watch the Today Show, or the morning shows that come on the news, and oftentimes they will have very successful guests on.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a black woman on that they were interviewing. She had written this a book, and I mean now she's just moved forward financially. She has affluence and influence now, but she said something on that show that she actually still deals with the stress of being a black woman. Now, though
Absolutely.
she's successful, she has amassed her dreams, the things that she wanted to do, but the
Mm-hmm.
stress was still
Mm-hmm.
there. And you know, we in our society tend to act like we don't see it, or either we ignore it because we don't know how to fix it. So we typically run
Mm-hmm.
to the church that's giving us a message that we have purpose and we have destiny and we're chosen and we're special. And then when you digest that and try to reconcile that with the reality of your life, that creates another social stress.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And we really have not looked at how that long term exposure, coupled with what's in the genes, coupled with, many people, both of my grandparents developed dementia, but they were in their 90s, you know, and it's on both sides of the family. So you add that piece to it and this whole environmental piece, and you understand why it is so prevalent and why in the next few years it's just literally going to blow up all across the country, across every demographic.
My concern is that the victims of the disease are getting younger and younger.
Absolutely.
Typically, they present it, say in the 70s, 80s, 90s, but now you have people in their 50s who
Mm-hmm.
who have pre Alzheimer's or pre dementia. They're already experiencing memory loss and experiencing not being able to find things, put down their keys and can't find them, or they start losing things. So they think, but then when they go back, the thing is there. And all of those, as I was studying about this, um, can give you some indication that there is something going on in the brain, in the mind, in your connection with your reality of your environment.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And so how do we is there a way, that might be a better question, is there a way to reconcile that, to minimize the stress on the mind and the emotions, because those two areas are affected the most, because what the mind cannot deal with, it shuts down. So that once it shuts down to protect itself, then you're really left not knowing what to do. So you get diagnosed with the psychosis, or you have to take pills. And I was reading, Dr. Hyman, when I was really looking at this to do this for the month of August,
Mm-hmm.
it was talking about the number of Americans not only are they addicted to hallucinogenic drugs, but they are addicted to what we call mental health drugs that that's dealing with dementia, depression, anxiety. There are people who take pills every day to deal with their anxiety, to deal with depression. And now if you look at TV at all, they've come up with a co-drug. They're giving your own medicine for depression. And now
Mm-hmm.
they've created an additional drug to help that medicine serve you better. And that's a concern for me because I have children coming up through that age. My son's going to be 50, and I'm concerned about that, because it's happening. And when you try to talk to people, we don't like to talk about what really happened
Mm-hmm.
during the slavery period. Dr. Dana Carson wrote a book called The Five Watersheds, and I'm over halfway finished reading it. And I have so many answers that I can bring closure to after reading that material. And a good bit of it explains the economics of slavery and how
Mm-hmm.
it's still around in our generation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
So,
if
yep.
there's anything, what can we do? I always tell people, listen, therapy needs to be a part of your lifestyle, your general lifestyle. At some point, you need to go get therapy just to make sure you are operating objectively, that you're in touch with, the reality of your life. But what can we do? What is there anything we can do?
Well, this is to the people who don't have dementia. Okay.
Right.
Because for the most part, and I do want to get into some of the symptoms and the signs of it, so we'll know what to look for. But let's connect that to the therapy piece.
Okay.
If you Black in America, you're gonna have some kind of trauma. You may not even be aware of it because we're born into oppression. We were born into exile. We were born with no identity that we could connect back to, so to speak. And so then the awareness is how much all of this, and we are resilient people, but how much all of this has impacted us. We need to kind of go back and look at it and say, okay, what did growing up like that do? What did growing up and my daddy left do? What did growing up and Uncle Pookie and Uncle Scold and then Uncle Ray Ray, that wasn't my uncles, but
Right.
my mama needed a man in the house for economics and for safety. What did that do? If I'm military, what did moving around do in terms of my safety and security needs? If I was mishandled, even in terms of sexual abuse, neglect, abandonment, or if I grew up in a hostile environment in the house or outside of the house. Most of us don't know no different because that's all we know. But we begin to ask, okay, what did this do to me? And so if we can just even employ mental health coaching, therapy,
Yes.
from, and these are few and far between, Black psychologists who are actually PhD level clinical psychologists, few and far between. And part of that's to, all of the stuff to exclude us, like they do doctors and everything else. But we have licensed professional counselors for people who don't have severe stuff, or licensed clinical social workers for people whose social stuff is making them cuckoo, or your licensed family, marriage and family therapist or whatever. So we have an abundance of things, but if it's really severe and you really want to get underneath it, we need to look for a psychologist. If we could begin to employ coaching and psychological counseling and therapy, they're all three different things based on the severity of what we're dealing with. And the severity looks at frequency, it looks at intensity, and how maladaptive it is, or how much it impedes your daily activity or keeps you from thriving. But if we could start putting those things in place now, we may be able to prevent some of cognitive decline that is associated with trauma in the brain. If you've had accidents, I remember my mother had a terrible accident. She had two. And each time we saw just the trauma of the accident. And she's so resilient. She just got on up out the accident and walked off twice. I'm talking about twice. I mean, the devil literally tried to kill her. Bricks wouldn't stop, all kind of old crazy stuff. And she just got and walked out. But the effect of that, that repressed trauma or even a little bit of traumatic brain injury, any of those things that you can begin to engage in to reduce stress, to work through traumas that have happened, to get skills to manage depression. Dr. Clark mentioned pills. But I can tell you, as an old school psychologist, pills do not work alone. For some people, therapy does not work alone. You may need both pills and therapy. It's proven. And if you can begin to start working on that stuff now, before you get too far into cognitive decline, you can stay some of this. You may be able to avoid, everybody don't get it, but you may be able to avoid some of this. And certainly you're going to be better. So when you are better psychologically, we often say, and I got this from Dr. Cindy Trim, your issues show up in your tissues.
Yeah.
And so whatever is going on in the mind is automatically going on in the body. And whatever is going on in the body is automatically affecting the mind and the brain. Okay. So if we have time, Dr. Clark, I know you asked me for some of these symptoms, and we need to understand that it's just like depression and anxiety. It don't just affect one thing.
Right.
Multi-dimensional. So when we talk about it has 7 stages of it, just goes from one severity to another. Okay. But there's cognitive changes. There are behavioral changes. There are mood changes. There are psychological changes. There are muscular changes. Okay, so I want to run through those rather quickly. When we talk about cognitive, your thinking ability, judging ability, reasoning ability. So we talk about the cognitive symptoms, what we call basic mental decline. Most people have some of that with age. Also, certain viruses bring on cognitive decline, mental decline. I'm in my 60s, but I'm telling you, my memory not the same as it was in my 50s. But after I had back-to-back COVID, they're looking at now certain viruses that were that came in through the nasal passage. Some people begin to lose their sense of smell, and there is a direct correlation between the development of dementia and the inability to smell. So even with people that had COVID and lost their sense of smell, many of them are reporting brain fog. Certain memories are just gone. They're just gone. And so this is also viral related. Okay, so this is for all the COVID people with the brain fog. So the cognitive symptoms include confusion, mental decline, disorientation, don't know where I'm at, don't know what day it is, don't know what time it is. All right, inability to speak or to understand language, making things up, mental confusion, the inability to recognize common things. Okay, and we see that decline as it goes through the 7 stages. All right, and many of us can attest to this. We say them things get worse at night. That's the truth. It has something to do with the circadian cycle. That's your natural cycle that God connected with nature, so that when the sun go down, your chemicals in your body and all of that, because we're connected with nature, all of that starts to change. So them things can get a little worse at night, or a little more agitated. Behavioral changes, irritability, hostile to the person taking care of them, no filter, zero. So the saints be cussing. Okay? So the thing to tell them not to cuss ain't there. All right, that inhibition is not there. Um, you will see personality changes where you say, look like they just changed. They never was like this. So if they were passive, they may be hostile. If they were a little whatever, they may start getting passive and whiny. You may even see childlike behaviors, restlessness, a lack of restraint, wandering. And when it's, like Alzheimer's and stuff, they'll wander off and get lost and things like that. When we talk about mood, Dr. Clark already mentioned a few of those. Anxiety, loneliness. You may hear them talk about how many people are dead, especially if they're long livers. They done outlived everybody. So they got compounded grief. Okay. You may see mood swings or nervousness, psychological things. You will see depression. They don't feel like doing anything. They'll tell you, I don't feel like doing nothing. And if they're black and they work, they'll say, I done worked all my life and I ain't doing nothing. I done earned the right to do nothing. I can say what I want and do what I want. All of that is part of what appears to be depressive symptoms, loss of motivation. With Alzheimer's people, they'll begin to socially isolate. They just can't do people. You may see hallucination, and this is a good one. Paranoia. Who stole from me? You put in my pocketbook. Give my pocketbook. Mama, I need the pocketbook. Big Mom, I need the pocketbook to get me. I ain't that paranoia that somebody is doing something to them. And when you connect that back to us as a traumatized people, where somebody is always, the whole system is doing something to us. And so some of it is warranted. The muscular symptoms include the inability to combine muscle movement, or you'll see their gait start to change, or they're unsteady in walking. Of course, the memory loss, sometimes falling because they no sense of balance, jumble speech, and sometimes sleep disorder. Them things be up all night. They be like, Mama, Papa, it's 4:00. Go to bed. What time you say it is? It's 5 minutes after you just asked me. It's 4:05. Go to sleep, sir. I do that with my granddaddy. What time is it? Huh? It's 4:30. Now I'm gonna have to give you a pill. Yeah, so the sleep disturbances. It's kind of funny, but when we think about it, most of us have been around family with this stuff. Right. And we say it's getting old. No, it can't be just getting old, because then that would have to mean that everybody who is old would have to have these symptoms, and they do not. Right. Our church mother died at 101, and she remembered my phone number until she was 98. Okay. Yeah. See, none of that cognitive decline. Didn't have any of it. Right. Wow. And who knows genetically how she was able to do that. But there are a lot of people who do not experience dementia or Alzheimer's as they age. But it was just such a concern to me that they start reporting people in their 50s who were being diagnosed with it. And that means early, if you're starting at 50, and let's say you're going to live 70, 75, look how long you're going to live in a less than desirable state to enjoy your life. And look how long you're going to tie up somebody else's life. Or sure. Yeah. Because when you have dementia, everybody is affected. The whole everybody. The family, the community, the people in your block. Okay. Mr. Sam came outside in the pajamas. He never did that. I mean, the whole community. So there, if you have a good community, thank the Lord, my parents still live in the African American community, and they'll say, "Girl, your mom," So the community, but they're concerned. They're worried. If you're still active in church and other civic activities, they notice changes. And so it affects the entire community. All of us have it. And you're right, the onset of it many times is missed for years, because we just say, I'm just getting a little forgetful, or I'm just whatever. Sometimes the brain is doing stuff and we don't really see any significant symptoms. But usually after 65 or 70, then you see it. But as you said, now people have onset in their 50s and 60s.
Wow, it's really a serious event in our society, and especially in our community. And it often saddens me that if there's any disease or any malady, we're going to have the highest rate in it. And I have always associated that with the leftover slavery mentality. Even if your particular bloodline of people did not experience slavery, the fact that they were in the environment of it affected them. Because as I was studying, and too bad we don't get the real history when we're growing up. Here I am, 60 something, and I'm just really, really getting deeper into our true history outside of what we've been taught. And it is just the more I'm reading, or maybe I'm getting older, a little more mature, I'm starting to see a lot of these things differently.
Yes.
And I want to proactively do something about it. Thus, Unplugged was born. Let's just bring some stuff out and talk about it. Let's bring an awareness, especially in the Black church, especially because there's a great community of people there who are just cut off from doing anything about their mental health. They're mad all the time, frustrated all the time. And then we tell them, well, you just pray. And prayer is great. It's a privilege to be able to talk to God and have him talk back to you. But sometimes we need to talk to people. And that's in the Bible. That is in the Bible, actually. It says, confess your faults one to another. And what he was talking about was not say, oh, I'm sinning. Is I'm having difficulty in this. What do you think? Can you objectively speak to this? So I just have a passion. I guess you could tell I have a passion for that. I believe things could be different if we would employ synergy. Synergy is the new energy. And I believe if we employ that, we can really bring change. Dr. Hyman, I thank you so much for being on this broadcast. I do know I'm going to have you back again because I just love talking with you. And I believe the audience appreciates the intelligentsia, the information that you bring to the broadcast. So once again,
can I put a little plug in?
Yeah.
Something we talked about before the show. You're talking about diet, and we didn't even get to the caregiver. All right, but remember, the caregiver go first.
Right.
So play often, pray hard, take breaks, get support groups. All right, and if you're able to do so, get out of there. Go do something. I'm serious. And you don't need to feel guilty for doing that, because a lot of times they make you feel guilty for leaving them, and all of that. But you have to protect yourself so you can finish your assignment. But I know you asked a little bit about what kind of foods we can that maybe kind of feed the brain, that maybe slow the progression of it. But just the regular stuff that we talk about, the more color that's on your plate, the better. Okay. That's your fruits, that's your vegetables, fish, poultry, eggs, healthy fats like your olive oils and things like that, coconut water, all of which have been shown to decrease inflammation and prevent cell damage at the cellular level. This is a challenge for most old people, but getting them to drink pH balanced water, just getting them to drink, hydrating the mind, because if the veins and everything else in your body are dehydrated and you're starting to swell or whatever like that, then you can bet your bottom dollar that those same arteries and things, veins in your head are dehydrated. So keep the brain hydrated. Colorful fruits and vegetables. The more color, the better, because you want foods that are rich in carotenoids. You want that. Your carrots, your squash, your sweet potatoes, tomatoes, papaya, apricot, leafy green vegetables, spinach, and kale, not collards that are genetically modified. Okay. Your berries, particularly your blueberries and things like that. If you're diabetic, you want your darker berries because they are lower in glucose. All right. Your fish and things like that. Nuts, if you, and then we be having stomach problem, but nuts, seeds, and legumes, whole grains, and foods to avoid if you have any kind of cognitive decline. Red meat, top of the list. Red meat, sugary sweets, and beverages. Because when the glucose level raises in people with dementia, they have more symptoms and more acting out, and they're a little more disoriented. Refined grains, fried foods, and processed fast foods, avoid. And for God's sake, when y'all get dementia, don't drink. Thank y'all.
Thank you for that tidbit, Dr. Hyman. Woo. We always enjoy you when you're on the show, and I look forward to just future communication and fellowship with you.
Amen.
All right. Well, we have come to the end of this broadcast, and we're so grateful for Dr. Hyman and her input, information that she brings to the show. You can look her up. If you Google her, you'll find the many avenues that you can get in touch with her if you are interested in connecting with her, or you would like to have her come to your area and do a workshop on mental illness or mental health. Please do so. Thank you for joining us this week. And don't forget, Motown Review is coming up September 30th, 4 o'clock in the afternoon at the Social Event Center, 644 Accessory Boulevard. Get your ticket now. Get your ticket early because it's going to be fun, fun, fun. Honoring grandparents who are raising their grandchildren. You can go to my website, drdianeclark.org, for further information. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next Thursday night, 7 o'clock p.m. for Unplugged with Dr. Diane Clark.
Thanks for joining us for Unplugged Live with Dr. Diane Smith Clark, PhD, helping to bring change and transformation in the mental health space within the church community. Dr. Diane wants to hear from you. If you have any questions, comments, guest recommendations, or program topic ideas, visit DianeUnplugged.com and click the Contact Us link. Dr. Diane also appreciates your prayers and your financial support. You can give online at DianeUnplugged.com and select Donate. If your business or ministry organization is interested in sponsoring this program, you can go to DianeUnplugged.com and click the Contact Us link. Unplugged Live is on all the social media platforms. Just search Dr. Diane Smith Clark, follow, and subscribe. Unplugged Live with Dr. Diane Smith Clark, PhD. Healthy mind, wealthy life.